I'll just introduce the first speaker then. So it's going to be Elizabeth Kirkpatrick Verenos, and she is reading Your Hat Still on the Chair. And she is responding to the artwork of Sharon Garner, who name of her piece is Hat, Chair, and Window.
Before I start, I want to thank Catherine Brown and Karen Reynolds for putting this together. It's such a great opportunity to bring the artistic community together. And we all feel a lot closer putting this together. I do urge everyone to go and see this exhibit at the gallery. My gratitude to Sharon Gardner for this fabulous photograph. I wanted to hang it on my wall. I thought it was so beautiful, and I was grateful I got to write to it. Your hat still on the chair when our room was as numinous as words, when we yearned for the future that burned in the air. There were moments we didn't see the darkening gold of the past that stole through the curtains, casting a barred shadow on the chair. You and I, distracted from the truth of silence, didn't realize the setting sun weighed more than the horizon, or that the cardboard devils were everywhere. Even the angels turned their backs to us. Lies we buried burst wordlessly into the approaching dusk. You moved forward without me. I knew you would. I asked you to. Thank you.
I'm Holly Tannen. I'm responding to a pair of etchings by Mary T. Anderson entitled Bad Hair Day. And this fable is entitled The Vulture and the Raven. A pair of turkey vultures settled in a dead pine overlooking Big River. The beach was littered with the bodies of unvaccinated tourists, so they feasted and reared 3 chicks instead of 2. But Fuddlehead's cafe closed, and the birds had to revert to their traditional fare of dead squirrels, skunks, raccoons, and the odd labradoodle. The downy white chicks huddled together, waiting for Mom and Dad to return and regurgitate meat for them. If a hawk circled overhead, Veronica, Violet, and Victor hissed like snakes and frightened it away. One rainy day, their mother said it was time they learned to hunt. Veronica, the eldest, took off first. She flew down the beach and found the carcass of a harbor seal. But try as she might, she couldn't tear through the thick skin. She headed back to the pine tree, wet and dejected, and her mother had to disgorge dinner for her. "Sissy," said Victor, "I could have opened that carcass with my mighty beak." Then Violet set out on her first feeding flight. She scoped out Highway 1 until she came upon a cat carcass. But whenever she took a bite, a log truck whizzed by, and she had to take wing. She flew home, cold and downhearted, and her mother regurgitated food for her. "Coward," said Victor. "I would have flapped my fearsome wings and scared off those trucks." Then it was Victor's turn. He soared up Big River until he smelled a squashed skunk. "I'll show those girls how to deal with carrion." He glided down and landed next to the carcass. Tearing off bits of flesh, he gorged himself. Then he saw 5 black birds overhead. "Ravens! Must be that Stanford bunch." They landed on the ground beside the skunk. "Flock off," he hollered. "You get plenty of scraps at the inn." "Tofu gives me the runs," said a female raven, And don't get me going about kale.
Okay.
Rather than keeping a respectful distance, the ravens huddled close by. The female left the group and hopped past him. She's probably headed off to take a pee, Victor thought. He tore through fur and skin into the skunk's insect-filled intestines. All of a sudden, he felt a searing pain in his rear end. He whirled around and snapped at the raven, who jumped sideways and flapped into the air, quirking. He chased her into a redwood tree. By the time he made his way back to the road, the other ravens had pulled the carcass under a blackberry bush and were daintily lunching. He returned home, wings drooping, turning round and round inside the nest cavity in a vain attempt to hide his missing tail feathers. His mother preened his head. "Tomorrow your sisters will show you how to do it. Have some nice vomit."
Okay, I'm next. I'm Doug Fortier. The title of my piece is Our Needs. I responded to the artwork of Karen Bowers titled Coast Call 2. Our Needs. A woman with white hair walks in Keystone Park in northern Omaha and sees a woman with an unveiled hijab covering her head. She is selling paintings done in green blues, dark and light, with variations of tan splotched with white and the tiniest bits of ochre. The abstracts don't jump out at the older woman, and she continues her walk, but the subtle images percolate in her subconscious as she moves farther along the path. Still within sight of the paintings, leaning on a bench, she stops and thinks, "This Muslim woman needs money." She returns to examine them more closely, then picks one. It could be seen as mountaintops above the clouds, with rocky details represented by collaged paper that may have come from a phone book, painted over in the shades of green. She pulls a checkbook from her purse and selects the painting as she says, "I'll take it. How much is it?" Without hesitation, the woman covering her hair says, $300, then averts her eyes. The well-dressed older woman writes in the amounts and signs it. "Would you please fill in your name and I'll write it in my check register." She hands the check to the painter, who puts a name on the payee line and holds it up for the woman to read. Baija Al-Hamad. And in unnatural English, the painter says, "Thank you, Miriam Smith." Miriam later returns many times to the name written in the register, fixing it in her memory and wondering how this woman happens to be in Omaha. Several days later, Miriam is reading in the front room facing the residential street. A 20-year-old Toyota with several dents and faded blue paint stops in her driveway. Walking toward her, the woman painter holds a piece of paper in both hands. "Come in, please," Miriam says after opening the screen door. She leads her guest toward a pair of chairs, then gestures for her to sit. Neither speaks, each waiting for the other. Miriam says, "I know how your name is spelled, but what may I call you?" "Please call me Miriam." "Thank you, Miriam," the painter says in halting English. "My first name is Bahija. It means happy in Arabic." She hands Miriam the paper, the check written for the painting. "I cannot take your money." After a long pause, Miriam accepts it. "Is there something wrong?" Miriam asks. Bahija stands. "I'm sorry, I must go now. I want you to keep the painting." She moves toward the door, but Miriam steps in front of her. "Don't go. Won't you keep an old woman company for a few minutes and tell me how you came to live in Omaha?" Bahija looks into Miriam's eyes and returns to her seat. The painting is not worth what I asked, Baija says. My aunt brought me here 5 years ago from a refugee camp. The painting is my memory of first seeing the edge of the camp. Those are tents between the sand and the water? Miriam asks. Baija nods agreement. Miriam puts the check into Baija's hand and says, I don't need the money. Please keep it. Their eyes meet again, and Baija smiles for the first time. When Miriam asks if her guest can stay a while, she nods in agreement. I'll make tea. That's the end. So Maureen.
I'm Maureen Epstein, and my piece, Angel Wings, is responding to Pat Toth-Smith's photograph, Swan Dive. Angel Wings. Brother Caedmon scowled as he heaved himself up from his desk in the scriptorium. Gold had been given to the monastery for a new psalter, which was to have as its preface a picture of the Virgin and Child attended by angels. A mother and infant he could paint, but he had never seen an angel, nor even a picture of one. What shape were their wings? The abbot was no help. God will show you, he had said. Seeking to clear his head, he plodded out into the garden. Overcast sky, dark as his mood. Bees buzzed in the betony. A butterfly flittered between hyssop and dill. Too flimsy, he muttered as he stumbled down the path to the mill pond. At water's edge, ducks dabbled among the reeds. A dragonfly dipped to the water. Further out, 2 swans floated, coldly aloof. A whoosh of spray as a 3rd swan flew in, webbed feet planing the surface, wings outstretched to slow its speed. Time itself seemed to slow as Caedmon took in the shape of the wings. Roundness at the top where feathers covered bone. Joint like an elbow. Long, shallow curve from wingtip to base. Flourish of curl at both ends. Yes, he sank to his knees. Thank you.
Hello, I am Susan Fisher, without a C, by the way. Someone misspelled it. So it's Fisher, and my story is The Importance of Flowers. The art initiator is Joseph Duvivier, and his work is called On Reflection. The importance of flowers. Their blue-violet hue haunted her. It was the color of hope rising above despair. The iris's beautiful form against the distant sky was her heaven. She was exultant when they bloomed and mournful when they faded away. Muriel could not think about the day she was captured without shaking. Too much, too much. But after the violence was over, she awoke in a place as dark as a tomb that smelled of dank earth. Morning came and revealed a circle of brightness high above. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light of her confined space. She estimated she was encased in a long vertical tube, approximately 7 feet in diameter. The walls were slimy, slick, and too wide to gain any foothold, though she tried many times. On one side of the space was a red bucket and 4 rough gray blankets neatly folded. Atop the stack of covers, she found a tin bowl and spoon. That was it. Night came. A ground level transparent lid was unlocked and pulled away. A shadowy form lowered a swinging pot tied to a rope. Inside was unappealing, congealed stew. A liter bottle of water was lowered on a second rope. The figure's flat-toned voice asked if she needed the red waste bucket brought up. No, she said. She was directed to empty the stew into her bowl and to untie the water bottle, which she did. Before she could ask any questions or make any protest, the ropes were drawn up and the voice ceased. Her caretaker left no flashlight, no toilet paper, no explanation, not even threats. This went on day after day. She found if she made a request quickly at the beginning of the process, she might get something she needed on the next visit. The primary thing that kept her from self-harm was looking up toward the light to see the iris against the blue sky. The flowers were everything to her. She learned their blooming patterns so she could anticipate with some accuracy when they would come back to her. After incalculable times of singing every song she knew and making up some new ones, of reciting poems learned at school, of long conversations with herself and imaginary ones with old friends and enemies, the overhead hatch opened during daylight, something that had never happened before. She heard voices engaged in conversation. Muriel strained with all her might to shout. Her hoarse pleas sounded like gibberish. "Escucho algo ahí abajo," said a woman. A group of curious field workers peered down, and Muriel yelled and banged her metal bowl against the red bucket to verify her existence. Soon, more people and loud machinery arrived, and she was hauled up into the light. The iris, moved by sweet-scented wind, waved to the rescue prisoner. In the brightness of midday sun, Muriel squinted and looked at her flowers one last time through her slightly spread fingers.
Hi, Windflower here. And my short poem is called Found Objects, and it's in response to a watercolor by Stephen Gardner called Night Nagual. And I learned upon the exhibit being online, I went to look up, I didn't know what Nagual meant, but it basically is a personal guardian angel regarded by some Mesoamerican Indians to reside in an animal. So there's a learning. So here's the poem, Found Objects. One day I stumbled upon a skull along the coastline. Perhaps what was once a cow washed ashore. I read about sunbathing cows in Europe and Africa, cooling their heels on a hot summer's day, and those who make the 2-mile journey across a low tide beach to an uninhabited Scottish island to give birth. Centuries ago, air pregnant with the taste of salt, shipwrecked sailors noticed those misplaced dots in the distance. Thank you.
I responded to Rachel Long's art, which was called In the Mist, and I titled it Through the Ages. Through the ages. Centuries-old Egyptian pyramid and centuries-old earth lead us through the ages. The creatures in the corners look like ammonites, marine invertebrates.
On the iPad, there's nowhere in this thing to see view, but if you tap, here, I'll show you.
You're off, right, because your face showed up.
Please mute yourself.
If I do that, I see her. If I do that, I see that.
Linda, we can hear you. Please mute yourself.
The creatures in the corners look like ammonites, marine invertebrates. Pliny, the ancient philosopher, called them horns of Ammon, their spiral shapes reminding him of ram's horns associated with the Egyptian god Ammon. They fall at their death to the seafloor and are buried in the sediment. They date the rocks in which they are found, centuries old. The bold ichthyosaurus is the most interesting specimen. On the beach at Lyme, England, two women, Mary Anning and Elizabeth Philpott, are the first to discover these fabulous creatures. I see two of them in the painting. They show me the age of our planet, the drama of our lives lived to their fullest from beginning to end. Life's journey is reflected in these creatures. They remind us of how the world changes every time there is an earthquake, a volcanic eruption, a war, a pandemic, or nothing. My 10-year-old granddaughter has a unique view of this illustrated world. She was abandoned at birth in the middle of a Chinese winter, outdoors on a snowy day. When asked what this painting means to her, she says, "It's different according to everyone's perspective." She sees in the landscape a sunny day at Casper Beach, Fort Bragg, on the sand with her loving adopted family. She brushes her straight black hair off her forehead with sandy fingers as she builds her dream castle with rocks and sticks. And so it is, from the baby seashells to the ancient pyramid, life improves with love and kindness. As my precious Zuyen's life at 10 and mine at...
All right, now I'm in business. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see myself though. All right, my name is Jonathan Pazer. I responded to a micrograph, which is a photograph of something microscopic by Sarah Wagner and David Flame, and their image was called multi-ocular radiolarian. And I did get a clue from initially that it was a radiolarian, and I pretty much knew it was a micrograph. Anyway, the poem, Radiolarian. She hung in the trusses dispassionately, champagne clinging to her side. Christened Radiolarian, an inspired name for this ship, a wild and cosmic inversion of the scale of our ambitions. Also a fine warning, be careful who you call infinitesimal. We are like a tiny microscopic sea creature that awakens to contemplate all the 7 seas of Earth. The once transcendent wonder of those 7 times vast to the mariner's earthbound eyes. Now, a quaint notion easily dispelled from orbit. One world ocean, bounded, finite, a thin, delicate coating of life that sheathes our rocky water planet, traversable, knowable home. Radiolarian swallowed again and again, stuffed with cargo, supplies, and sailors. Then she was full, and we made ready to slip the clamps of port. Cocooned in their berths, the boldest crew, accountants, milliners, baristas, astrogators, called to serve aboard this city that takes flight. Cloistered within her insulated flanks, pocked by acre-wide portholes, now all luminous with promises, kissed ever so lightly by time, we scream through the white, featureless, alternate infinity of hyperspace. A single mote of dust back home in my living room, shimmering in the late afternoon sun, as compared to Earth, is incomprehensibly larger than this great vessel set off against the infinite expanse of our own specific universe, the one into which we have this day set forth. Thank you.
I am Nancy Wallace Nelson, and my poem is Velvet Green Vulva. I'm responding to a beautiful collage multi-medium art that I've not seen yet by Shanti Benoit and Seb. There it is, beautiful piece called The First Star. The heart of Mother Earth pulses mid sparkling galaxies as she weaves her seamless rounds of fertility. Mother Earth suckles green, golden fields, nurtures mountains and hills, bears fruit in sweet profusion. Mother Earth's velvet green vulva undulates gracefully as she is luxuriously fertilized by the strong rolling waves of Father Sky. Majestic moon sits regal and bright, eternal witness to the blessed coupling. The tree of knowledge, man's ancient opportunity for freedom and enlightenment, stands darkened by voracious hubris. Its stark frigidity bears mortal threat to the sacred coupling that once kept man safe and warm within the opulent folds of Mother Earth's velvet green vulva.
I'm Nona Smith, and my piece is called Claudia. And I am very grateful to Lynn Zickerman, whose piece is called Claudia's Last. And she just captured my friend Claudia. She got the essence of her. Thank you very much, Lynn. Oh, Claudia. We held our wine glasses up and tapped their rims together. Clink. Do you know why that's done? Claudia asked. I have no idea, I said. The French began the custom centuries ago. It's to make us appreciative of all 5 of our senses. Claudia had a treasure trove of that kind of information. Ah, les Français, ils s'inventent, she said. She spoke 3 languages fluently and had enough vocabulary in others to find bathrooms in foreign countries and order wine in restaurants. Born in Germany and well-traveled, Claudia had European sensibilities and a sophisticated sense of style. Her hair was cut by a Sassoon-trained stylist. She wore only Italian-made shoes, and the walls of her dining room were painted Chinese red seasons before that trend appeared in Architectural Digest. She owned a few expensive, elegant gold pieces, but most of her jewelry was purchased during her travels from local artisans or at art fairs here at home. This is what we bonded over. On her first day working as a travel agent at Trips Out Travel, I admired her earrings, thumbnail-sized straight-back chairs crafted from black metal. Definitely not gold, but certainly expensive. Something she might have found in her museum gift shop. My compliment caused her to tuck a strand of red hair behind her ear and caress her earlobe. I found them in Taormina, she said. I had to sort through all that cameo crap they sell there before I found anything interesting. Claudia had opinions, very firm opinions, about food and clothing and what was worth spending money on. Her generous smile drew people to her. Her sharp tongue often sent them away. She possessed a quirky, wicked sense of humor and had a flair for the dramatic. She'd once been married and had a son, Adam, whom she adored. But when I met her, Claudia was living alone in a 1-bedroom gem of a house situated in the Berkeley Hills. She took her cockapoo Milo, a yappy, attention-grabbing dog, with her almost everywhere. And Claudia was devoted to the game of what if. What if you weren't a travel agent? What else would you be? What if you didn't live in this country? Where would you like to live? What if you knew how to play a musical instrument? What instrument would that be? Milo wasn't with us the afternoon we dined at our favorite dim sum restaurant in the city. We'd already polished off a bamboo steaming basket of shrimp dumplings and a platter of al dente Chinese broccoli with oyster sauce when Claudia nodded at the waitress rolling another dim sum laden trolley towards us. "We'll have the shumai and the pork buns," she said with some authority. We held our wine glasses up and tapped their rims together. Clink. "What if," Claudia began, "you were on death row and had to order your last meal? What would it be?" I don't recall what I answered, but Claudia's answer came quickly and definitively. She waved her chopsticks over the bountiful table. "This is what I would order." Late the next morning, Adam called. "It's bad news," he says. "It's Mom. She died yesterday." "Oh, Adam," I said. Tears sprang to my eyes. He continued to speak. Alone in the house, Milo was with her, brain aneurysm. I heard his words, vaguely, but the picture in my mind was of Claudia, her chopsticks held aloft, pronouncing the dim sum her last meal of choice.
And I want to thank Lynn Whiting for the beautiful painting she did in response to my poem. She calls her painting The Eloquence of Sunlight, which I found very fitting. Thank you, Lynn. Is the ineffable the graveyard of poetry, a poet's lament? What silver-tongued wordsmith can burnish his verses to rival the sheen of a silver-backed sea? What versificator ensconced on Parnassus can pen incantations, enact transmutations that harness the rays flaring from the sun and turn opalescent the waves' silken tresses cresting in the sea? What faltering bard gives chase to and captures the word thief who's fled with his muse and left mute the poet to ponder the wonder of a breaching whale? What declaiming lover can outwhisper the besotted redwoods that stretch furtive fingers up high out of sight to part gauze-clad clouds and caress the sky? What verse scribbling troubadour of the domestic delights, respectful of metric measure, of vowel and consonant rhyme, can pen a couplet, try as he will, to surpass the sunny courtesy of the neighborly nodding daffodil? Don't try to tether the moment with knots of slippery words. Fold hands in reverent awe. Stand there quietly humbled and give thanks that you passed by. Thank you.
I'm Lynn Kiesewetter, and my poem is a string of haiku strung together, and it's called The Hermit in the Backyard. Can you believe it? The hermit in the backyard is my ex-husband. If you had told me that after all the drama back in the old days, if you had told me then that one day we would be friends, I'd have told you no. Basho, Thoreau, Bash, Zarathustra, Zheng Daoling, and my ex-husband. Who can explain it? How does such a thing happen? Please explain to me. 2 Bambis and a doe, he phones from across the yard. That's it. He hangs up. And I want to thank James Sibbett for his painting. I love it.
I'm Nancy McClelland, and my piece is Color, Dolor, and it inspired the artwork by Larry Wagner titled Loved and Lost. Sage in winter, scratched silver, blue, black ashes, campfire gone cold. Remember a magenta self, You became a gorgeous flame. Other colors, mixed with lead, mixed with lime, vivid, lurid, lost. Fini.
I'm Norma Watkins, and my piece is called Boiling the Socks, and it was responded to by artist Mary Ellen Campbell. And her piece, it's an absolutely hilariously wonderful sculpture. I hope you'll all go see it. It's called Soft Boiled. Lucy opened the back door. The dark kitchen was filled with steam and smelled of vinegar. With her free hand, she flipped on the light. Her largest soup pot bubbled unattended on the stove. Putting down the sack of groceries, she peered inside. What the? Jeremy, a grunt from the couch in the living area. You're boiling your socks? Yeah. Why not use the washing machine? Nah. She looked closer. Your shoes are in here with them. Yeah. Lucy felt exhausted. $159 pair of sneakers. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to boil Nikes. A decent son would get up, come in the kitchen, give his mother a kiss, thank her for working so hard, and offer to help unpack the groceries. From the couch. It's okay. If you ruin them, I can't buy you a new pair. Another grunt. She turned the flame down under the pot. How long do you plan on letting them cook? 30 minutes. And then what? Put them in the dryer. She emptied the cloth bag of onions, peppers, canned tomatoes, ground beef, dried pasta, and milk. The boy could drink half a gallon a day. So the dryer's okay, but the washer's not? Silence. Enough to make her want to forget dinner and go straight to bed. Where did you get this idea? Internet. Which said, gets the stink out. Who says you stink? She felt her dander rising. Samantha. What's her nose doing near your feet? Lucy tried to picture that and shut it out of her mind. She says we use single-ply toilet paper. When was Samantha here? He wasn't supposed to have people in the house when she wasn't home. She wants to know why you don't buy me shampoo. Exasperated. I buy you shampoo. You're just too lazy to use it. She says soap makes my hair stiff. There's a girl she'd like to get her hands on, poking around in other people's houses. Tell Samantha to keep her hands out of your hair and her nose out of my bathroom. Why do we? What? Lucy washed her hands and got out the cutting board. Use single ply. It's recycled toilet paper. Yuck. That doesn't mean somebody else used it, silly. It's me trying to save the planet. What's for dinner? Spaghetti when I get my pot back. Lucy chopped an onion, letting the knife be angry for her. Can you get me some shampoo? Look under the bathroom sink. Samantha says I should use the purple stuff. The what? This Samantha needed a good shaking. Shampoo to make my hair blonder. She put the onions in the big skillet and began chopping green pepper. When Samantha earns the money to feed you, she can buy you whatever shampoo she wants. I'm not going to marry her. That tickled her, the idea of this useless lump marrying anyone. What are you doing on that computer? She could see the glow from over the couch. English homework, such as talking to the boy was like getting blood out of a turnip. An essay on what? How to rile your mother by boiling your socks. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Michelle Blackwell. This piece is titled Eulogy for Matthew Child. And the art responder, Robert Yellen, did a fabulous job with his piece, Acrobat, in capturing Matthew. So thank you, Robert, for a wonderful piece. Eulogy for Matthew Child. Matthew on point, balanced on the back of a folding metal chair. the kind ubiquitous in school auditoriums and church halls. The chair, one of many scattered across the stage. He leapt from the back of one chair to the next, jumped into an acrobatic roll as the final chair folded into itself and clattered to the floor. The staccato of metal bouncing on wood, timed to the Thelonious Monk. I sat in the darkened theater, awed. I had been warned his dance was avant-garde. My date introduced me to his old friend and fellow performer. He doesn't shake hands. He puts his leg over your arm, Harpo style, a tribute from one original to another. A faulty ladder, a fall 4 stories from a roof he had scaled to supplement his artist income, ended his dance. A dent the size of a handball where his scalp met his forehead. Dinner in Berkeley, at a long table littered with musicians and dancers, their families and friends in our favorite restaurant. It was before or after the Instant Composers concert. The waitress overwhelmed. Matthew jumps up, grabs the water pitchers and proceeds to fill our glasses. At our home for a concert, Matthew leaves early. Crowds, bright sunshine overwhelm him. He has good and bad days. Dinner with him and his wife, a fascinating actress who flew over from England to care for him, keeping his mystique alive. A 50th birthday bash full of characters and dreamers, dancers and players, and me, their audience. Decline. The phone rings unanswered. His wife gone, a deep love drowned in hopelessness. A players' reunion on the coast. We pick him up in Berkeley. He hasn't bathed, his descent untethered. I should have been more gracious. No contact. Matthew, a child to the end. He gave us glimpses of what we could have been. Thank you.
I'm Donald Shepard. I wrote Surreal Moments, and Claire Fortier interpreted that as desolation. My piece is called Surreal Memories. Wind whips an old man who leans on 2 sticks. He shuffles around to peer over the desolate landscape. He slips into the past and sees footprints across endless sand dunes and ridges of ash. The hillock of the southernmost horizon merges black against black, indistinguishable from the storm clouds above, except when lightning illuminates his view. In his mind's eye, he sees on the uphill slope, among the ruins of war, the waddling footsteps of a woman about to give birth. Her writhing erases the imprints, and blood cakes the ground into a shallow purple depression. Descending the ash ridge, her son's precious first, faltering toddles accompany her from incendiary bomb inferno to underground shelter. The mother's pace slows to keep time with her son and his 3 siblings. An ankle-deep groove marks 5 sets of footsteps trudging from the shallow nest to the underground bunker. They do not deviate from the rut until joined by the larger and sunken impressions of a man carrying a heavy load home from the war. Eventually, the trudge marks leave the rubble and ascend the grand sand dune. The smaller marks meander, crisscrossing the dune, climbing the windward side, stumble step by stumble step, and tumbling roly-poly down the leeward slope. Tracks radiate from the edge of the dune, where the sand mingles with cinders. Here the boys' indentations stray onto a solitary path. They climb the steep side of the ash ridge and frequently tumble down again. A tantrum of kick marks mars each place he falls. As the heelless sole prints grow, so the stride lengthens, and it is apparent that the youth runs. In many places, massed athletes leave vast flattened areas which taper into well-worn tracks. Once the boys' cleat marks arrive first at the finishing line, and the old heart flutters in remembered glory. The young man's tracks scale up and down the ridges and sometimes stray onto nearby dunes, where dainty young footprints approach. Increasingly, the widespread toe marks of a peasant girl parallel the youth's path. Sometimes the foot shapes match toe to toe. Where their bodies snuggle side by side, the sand radiates summer heat. The tot's tentative steps join the parallel footprints before they slide down the bank of sand. Two more sets of miniature bipeds accompany the family before beginning a struggle over alternating ash and sand. A deep rut between ridge and dune suggests they carry an imposing burden. As the three youthful tracks veer from those of the parents, the ash gives way to sand and the sky clears. The footprints, now matched in stride, set deeper into the ground, and no longer run, jump, or skip. They stop here and there, as if admiring bright yellow sand verbena, listening to a raven crackle, or watching a dust devil dance. The peasant woman's impressions end in a pit at the border of sand and ash. The other images, stationary for a long time, limp forward into the final northernmost mountain of ashes, where knee marks on the slope follow a changing gait. An arc drags from one right footstep to the next, each indentation close to its successor. Towards the end of the path through the ash, a row of stick holes parallels the faltering prints. Here at the steepest part of the slag heap lies a 6 feet deep hole. The old man slips into his grave and desiccates to dust. Above his remains, an ironic smile hovers, scans the past from birth to death, and faces the unknowable, trackless void.
My name is Erlene Gleisner, and I was the writer initiator with my piece called Complaint of a Redwood Tree. I'm really looking forward to the art piece by Robert Rhodes called Return to Standing. I'd also like to say I'm dedicating this piece in support of the protesters who have been standing in unison against the cutting of the old growth trees at Jackson Forest. Complaint of a redwood tree. I was meant to rise into the sky, to capture the fog and the wind, embrace them, bring the waters into my core, stand firm against the gusts to protect life on the land. I was meant to be with others of my kind, to communicate and nurture through our shared roots. I was meant to live into centuries, not crash to the ground, sawed apart, nailed back together into another form as a deck or shingles or a shed. I was meant to preserve the earth at my feet, keep the terrain intact. I was not meant to be taken for another purpose, leaving the soil naked to wash away in every rainfall, tumble into once pristine waters. I was meant to be here forever, not just as a memory in picture books read by children who face their days trying to survive in a wasteland. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Brown. The name of my piece is Baby's Bed, and the artist that responded is Laura Corbin, and her piece is named Bitter Harvest. The new season meant hands extended toward heaven, like hijos attempting to make designs in blue sand. Their noses would be full of the aroma of manzanas, much better than their sweat. After the picking, the owners would let them return for the culls, and Isabel would make applesauce for little Felipe. Pablo would arrive shortly. Manuel had offered to drive them north with their few belongings. The new house wouldn't be much larger, but the only furniture she and Pablo owned consisted of a lamp and Felipe's baby bed. No, they didn't need much space. In the kitchen, she packed their son's bottles in the bent aluminum pot. Of course, she still breastfed her son, but he also needed water and juice and mashed fruit and cereal. In the bedroom, she gathered her dress, skirt, 4 tops, 2 pairs of pants, and her sandals. She folded them neatly into a large trash bag. Pablo already wore his shorts and work boots. She folded his 2 pairs of pants and 2 shirts. At least they would not pick Fresno's grapes anymore, where the powder fell on them like yellow dust and ground into their clothes and nails. When she and Pablo brushed back their hair, it left a streak like a shock of gray. Maybe in Washington, Pablo would find another job, like at Cisneros Market, where he would only stock shelves and greet people. Pablo meant amigo. It suited him. No one could resist his gentle voice and smile. Maybe he would go to school, finish his GED, and take college classes. He would need to provide for Felipe because Felipe would not provide for himself. Isabel returned to the kitchen to check her son, where she had rolled his crib next to the window. It was not her and Pablo's fault, but it was. Felipe continued to sleep in his world of angels and innocence. Too soon he would know otherwise about the poison on the grapes. Too soon he would learn he would never need a bigger bed, even when a man. Thank you.
Howdy. I'm going to read a short memoir called The Choice. And the responding artist was Kathy Carl, who did a wonderful job with the picture. And I hope you get to the gallery and get a chance to see it. In 1956, my father had no idea I raced a British sports car or performed in community theater. He had placed me in the DC branch of the insurance brokerage he ran from Manhattan. And as far as he knew, insurance was my life. Until one morning on his daily train ride from Connecticut, when his seatmate said, "I see your kid won another one." My father was too much of a snob to read the sports pages. And when he discovered I spent my idle hours racing an AC Bristol around the country, he ordered me to meet him the next day for lunch in DC. Across the table, he studied me with displeasure. "You have a choice, son. You can either be a real American or you continue this sports car play acting silliness. Which is it going to be?" Well, this was my father, the man I most admired, the man whose approval I longed for. "I want to be a real American," I said. He leaned over the table. "Good choice. This is what we're going to do. I'm transferring you to the new office in Miami. I want you to find a nice American girl, someone who can help entertain clients, and marry her. Take up tennis or golf. Get yourself a nice American car." I nodded without realizing I was making a choice that would shape the next 20 years of my life. I moved in January 1957, met my wife, Evelyn, in February, and married her in June. We honeymooned in Havana, and in March 1958, she gave birth to the first of our 5 children. I did my best to become the man my father described. The insurance business went well. 45% of the time I was bored, 45% of the time I was scared, and 10% of the time I was happy, entertaining clients in posh London restaurants and taking fancy trips to Latin America. What's not to like? We built a nice house with a tennis court. On weekends, I fished Biscayne Bay and played golf with clients. My wife was a great mother and a talented hostess of dinner parties. When my father visited, he smiled his approval. I had become a good American businessman he wanted, and too busy to ask myself if this was the life I wanted. Until my father died. On the plane home from his funeral, I felt overwhelmed by emotions I could not describe and feelings that would turn my good life upside down. But that's another story.
Sue Gibson isn't here.
All right, this is, the author is Sue Gibson, and the name of the piece is Potty Time. Kindergarten bathrooms aren't pleasant places. Little kids like to wait until the very last minute, rush in from the play yard and pee all over the floor. At the end of the day, you pray for an early visit from the janitor. Then you don't need a gas mask to make your lesson plans. The first day of school is traumatic for kindergartners, and away from mama and so many new things to do, it's scary. One first day, Mary Elizabeth stood in front of the girls' bathroom door and wept big salty tears. Her big blue eyes swam with embarrassment. "Oh, teacher, I don't know what to do. I am so sorry I wet my pants. I don't know what to do now. I had to go real bad, but the door was closed and Mama said to never touch the doorknob on the toilet door. She said there's germs everywhere and I could get sick. The door was closed and I peed my pants. That horrid Raymond saw me and told everyone, and I know they'll call me nasty names. I hate him. I had a stash of extra clothes for such occasions and got her tidied up and dry. I also had a long talk with Raymond about being kind. We were experiencing a drought, and as all the little kids sat in the big rug in the front of me in my rocking chair, I said, "You have homework. We are trying to save water. Ask your mama and daddy what you are doing to save water at your house. Tomorrow, we'll share and learn from each other." The next day at sharing time, I asked about the water at their homes. All sorts of answers. And then there was a prize winner. Lester joined in with, "My mama says that if I have to go big poopy, to go next door and flush their toilet." They don't teach this stuff in college.
Good. Yay.
Thank you, everyone. I have to run. That was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone. It was wonderful. Go to Co-op and take a look and go on the website. And we'll stay for a few minutes for anyone who wants to stay after.